Someone in your life is using dark psychology on you right now. Not a villain, not a stranger, someone you probably trust. And the reason you haven't noticed is not because you're naive. It's because dark psychology is specifically designed to be invisible to the person it's being used on. In the next 10 minutes, I am going to show you exactly what dark psychology is, where it comes from, who uses it, and most importantly, the exact patterns you need to recognize to protect yourself before the damage is done. Picture this. You are in a conversation with someone close to you, a partner, a colleague, a family member. The conversation starts normally, but somewhere in the middle of it, something shifts, and you cannot identify what. You walk away from the interaction feeling smaller than when you walked in. You feel confused, maybe even guilty, but you cannot explain why. You did not agree to feel that way. Nothing obviously bad happened, but you feel it anyway. That is not an accident. That feeling, that specific, subtle, disorientating feeling, is frequently the fingerprint of dark psychology in action. And once you understand the science behind it, you will never miss it again. So what exactly is dark psychology? The term was not invented by the internet. It has a direct foundation in academic research. In the 1990s, psychologists Delroy Paulhus and Kevin Williams identified a cluster of 3 personality traits that, when present together, predicted harmful and exploitative behavior in social relationships. They called this cluster the dark triad. The 3 traits are narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. And here is what most people get wrong about these words. They imagine a movie villain, someone obviously dangerous, someone you would spot immediately. That is the opposite of how the dark triad actually presents. Narcissism in its dark form is not loud arrogance. It is a calculated need for admiration combined with a complete inability to genuinely empathize with the internal experience of other people. The person feels real to them. You do not. Machiavellianism, named after the Renaissance political philosopher Niccolò Machiavelli, describes a personality style built entirely around strategic manipulation to achieve personal goals. People high in this trait view every social interaction as a game with winners and losers. They plan their conversations the way a chess player plans moves. Several steps ahead, always. And psychopathy, not the dramatic Hollywood version, refers to a persistent, low-level absence of remorse, a shallow emotional range, and a heightened tolerance for risk. It does not require violence. It requires only that the consequences of harm to you produce nothing in them. What Paulhus and Williams found, and what decades of research since have confirmed, is that these 3 traits frequently appear together in ordinary people, not in prisons, in offices, in families, in relationships, in friend groups. At levels most people would never classify as a clinical problem, but at levels high enough to cause real, measurable harm to the people around them. But here's where it gets far more disturbing. Dark psychology as a practice is not just about who someone is. It is about what they do with those traits in everyday interactions. And the methods are sophisticated enough that they have specific names in psychological literature. The first method is love bombing. This is where a person with dark triad traits opens a relationship, romantic, professional, or social, with an overwhelming flood of praise, attention, affirmation, and what feels like profound connection. You feel seen in a way you have rarely felt seen before. You feel chosen, special. The relationship accelerates at a pace that feels exciting rather than alarming. What is actually happening is the construction of emotional dependency. The person is establishing themselves as your primary source of positive feeling, so that when the dynamic shifts later, you are already emotionally tethered. You are already comparing every low moment to those extraordinary highs. You are already working to get back to something that, in its original form, was never entirely real. The second method is intermittent reinforcement. This is one of the most powerful psychological levers that exists in human behavior. And it is not unique to dark psychology. It was identified in behavioral research decades ago. When reward is unpredictable, sometimes present, sometimes absent, on no reliable schedule, the brain does not lose interest. It becomes obsessed. It produces dopamine not in response to the reward itself, but in response to the anticipation of whether the reward will arrive. People who use dark psychology understand this, whether consciously or not. They alternate warmth with coldness, approval with withdrawal, closeness with distance. And your brain, doing exactly what evolution designed it to do, locks onto the pattern and works harder to resolve it. The third method is DARVO, which stands for deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. This is the technique that leaves people most confused after difficult conversations. You raise a concern. The other person denies it happened, then attacks your credibility for raising it, then positions themselves as the one who has actually been wronged by the act of you speaking up. You came into the conversation with a grievance. You leave it apologizing. And the original issue has completely disappeared. This is the part nobody talks about. The detail that most people cannot immediately accept when they learn about dark psychology is this. The majority of people who use these techniques are not fully conscious of what they are doing. Research by psychologist Jennifer Fried and others in the field of betrayal trauma suggests that many people who deploy manipulative behavioral patterns do so from a place of deep psychological conditioning, often learned survival strategies from childhood environments where control and emotional suppression were modeled as normal. This does not make the behavior acceptable. It does not reduce the harm it causes. But it does explain why the person you are thinking of right now, the one who came to mind during this video, may seem entirely unaware of the effect they are having. Some are calculating, many are not. But the impact on you is identical either way. And here is the part that should disturb you more than anything else in this video. A 2018 meta-analysis reviewing over 400 individual studies found that dark triad traits are significantly more common in the general population than clinical frameworks suggest. The researchers concluded that subclinical levels, meaning levels that would never produce a diagnosis, were present in a substantial portion of the people we encounter in ordinary social life. You are not dealing with rare exceptions. You are navigating a world where these traits exist at low levels in many of the people around you, which is why knowing how to protect yourself is not paranoia. It is basic psychological literacy. And if you think that's something, wait for this. So how do you actually protect yourself? Not with suspicion, not with walls, with pattern recognition. The first protection is learning to trust the feeling before you trust the explanation. When you walk away from an interaction feeling diminished, confused, or guilty without a clear reason, do not immediately try to rationalize it away. That feeling is data. Your nervous system registered something before your conscious mind could process it. Start paying attention to what interaction produced it, not why the other person probably did not mean it. The second protection is understanding the cycle, not just the moment. Isolated incidents are easy to dismiss, but dark psychology reveals itself in patterns over time, not in single events. Start noting when the warmth arrives and when it withdraws. Note whether accountability ever lands with this person, or whether every difficult conversation ends with you holding responsibility that was not yours to begin with. The third protection is controlled disclosure. People who use dark psychology tactics, consciously or not, rely on access to your vulnerabilities. The faster you reveal what matters most to you, what you fear, what you need, the faster they have a map of what to use. Slow down. Let trust be earned incrementally. Real connection does not require you to become emotionally transparent in the first month. The fourth protection is having what psychologists call a reality anchor. One or two people in your life who are not connected to the person or situation in question, and whose assessment of events you trust. Manipulation, particularly gaslighting, works by isolating your perception. It tells you that what you experienced is wrong. A reality anchor is someone who can reflect back what they observe without agenda. This is not about seeking validation. It is about maintaining access to an accurate external perspective when your own internal one is being systematically undermined. The fifth protection is the hardest one. Accept that love and harm are not mutually exclusive. One of the most powerful reasons dark psychology goes unrecognized for so long is that the person using it is also, in other moments, genuinely warm, genuinely caring. The good times were real, but so was the harm. Both things can be true simultaneously, and recognizing that is not cynicism. It is clarity. Dark psychology is not a conspiracy theory. It is not a TikTok trend. It is a cluster of documented psychological traits and behavioral patterns that cause measurable harm in real relationships, and the research behind it has been building for over 30 years. The reason most people never learn this is not because it is difficult to understand. It is because understanding it requires accepting an uncomfortable truth that the people capable of this are not strangers. They are familiar, and in many cases, they are people you chose to let in. But here is what that knowledge actually gives you. It removes the self-blame. When you understand the mechanism, you stop asking what you did wrong and start asking what pattern you were caught inside. That shift from self-blame to pattern recognition is the beginning of protection. You cannot unsee this now, and that is the point. The single most effective thing you can do with this information is learn to recognize the specific tactics before they are fully deployed. Before the emotional dependency is established, before the pattern is locked in, which is exactly what the next video in this series covers, the 5 most common manipulation tactics used in everyday relationships, and the exact phrases and behaviors that signal each one in real time. I will leave you with one question. Think about a relationship, past or present, where you consistently felt smaller after interactions than you did before them. What did you tell yourself to explain that feeling away? Tell me in the comments. You will not be the only one.